Okay, and good morning, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Darby Malvi, and I'm also a programming and outreach specialist with Library Link NJ. I hope that you all enjoyed the keynote. I know that I did, and I hope that you're already learning a lot. We are starting the lightning talk sessions. So if you are in track A, you're actually going to stay right here. You don't need to go to any breakout room because we're just going to host it right here in the main room, as Teresa said. If you need to go to the B breakout room, you can just click right on the bottom of your screen. You should see a breakout rooms option, and you can join track B if you want to hear those lightning talks. I've only been allotted 2 minutes, so I'm going to speak really quickly. If you I see some tech issues in the chat. There are some tech folks here who are assigned to help you out with the technology. They have the word tech help in front of their names. So please seek them out, or if they could respond to the folks who are in the chat, only because we're on a tight schedule, and unfortunately I'd love to answer your tech questions, but I don't have enough time to do it all. So we are going to jump in just a minute with our lightning talks, and let you guys know what our lightning talk sessions here in track A are going to be. I think what we will do in the interest of time, Teresa, are you still here, or she maybe have went into the breakout rooms? I think what we're going to do in the interest of time is start with track A here in the main room, so that our presenters can get to talking. Hopefully you are all really excited to hear what the track A lightning talk presenters have to say. And then in the meantime, hopefully we will be able to sort out what's going to go on with the breakout rooms when we do the moderated roundtables later, because we'll have more breakout rooms there. So apologies if that was not your plan, but the track A presenters are awesome. So you're all winning in this scenario. So let me really super quickly, because we are behind, I'm going to introduce them really quickly. I'm not going to share they sent us lovely headshots and bios, but I will just give you a quick rundown. So we're going to hear from Sira Williams with Diversity Storytimes, then Carina Gonzalez serving Gen Z. We're going to hear from the incredible team at the Talking Book and Braille Center, Liz Burns, Jen Apgar, and Stephen Felle. They're going to talk about Reading is for Everyone, news and updates from the New Jersey State Library Talking Book and Braille Center. And then finally, we'll hear from Neil Grimes for Real Men Read. And who would not want to hear any of these speakers? So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sira to get us started.
Okay, let me try sharing my screen. All right, good morning, everybody. I am Sira Williams from the Red Bank Public Library. I'm going to talk about diversity story times, but I want to talk about diversity more broadly for just a minute, because in my mind, information equity simply means that making sure that no one's left behind, no matter what they look like, where they come from, what language they speak, or how they identify. And so to do that, advance my slides. I think diversity needs to be a consideration in all that we do, and we need to model it in every point of contact that a patron has with the library, from the people that they meet to the displays that they see, the materials on the shelves, and the programs that we offer. And so when it comes to the people that they meet, that's going to be our library staff and other community members. And the diversity on our library staffs is so important, but that's a subject for a whole nother conversation. And of course, we can't control the demographics of the communities that we serve, but we can help expose them to the full range of diversity in our greater society. And so what we found at our library over time is that the more we've embraced diversity, the more diverse our patrons have become, because they know that we're a welcoming and inclusive space. So it's never too late to begin this process, and it's never too early to talk about race with kids, and that's where our collection comes in. And so of course we want our collections to reflect our communities. And overall, New Jersey is very diverse, but it's still predominantly white, and most communities are. And so we have to be intentional about buying books with characters and storylines that represent a broad spectrum of experiences, so that our collections can be diverse and balanced. It's so important for kids to see themselves in the pages of a book, all kids. And so a diversity audit can be really helpful in pointing out what you're lacking, and then you can set some goals and timelines to build that up. It is a continuous process, and it should be done for all areas of your collection. But the books are out there. I put at least 3 good book lists and a lot of other resources on the Padlet for you to reference to find books representing Black, Latinx, Asian, Indigenous, and LGBTQ voices. So again, I hope you'll check those out. Once you have those books, you got to show them off. I think this goes for adults and kids, and Ashley and Rosalie just talked about how to do that in a meaningful and sincere way. But let people know you have them. Display them in the library, post them online, and I just think you can't underestimate the impact of that, because we all have regular patrons that never attend a program or check out a book. But they are in your space and they do register what they see when they're there. And if you're spotlighting other voices, then they see that there are people that are not like them, and that they have stories that are important and valued and interesting. And if they are a person of color and they see themselves, they do notice, they do take notice, and they feel seen. And I think that can create a connection. So now let's talk about programming, because studies show that even babies and toddlers do exhibit signs of racial bias. And so Storytime is a good place to start addressing that. But your program doesn't have to be called Anti-Racist Pre-K Storytimes in order for you to do that. And that actually might turn off some of your patrons. And so instead, you just want to start by infusing race-conscious talking points into your existing programs. And number one thing is that you got to read those diverse books about everyday situations so that you can celebrate differences, whatever your theme is for story time. And then as you read, you just naturally point out those differences and similarities, ask questions and make connections just like you would if you were talking about shapes or colors or counting. You could look at any of these books and say, oh, this girl has curly Black hair. I love it. My friend Maya has hair like that. Do you know anybody who has hair like that? And you just start these little conversations. And when you do, and you're talking about things like hair or skin color or names or body types or family types, then what you're really reinforcing is that everybody's different, and that's okay, and that we all belong. And you just have to be comfortable as you're doing it so that it's a natural and easy conversation. Because remember, as you're interacting with the kids, you're modeling for their caregivers on how they can engage with them around these issues. And so today, with things like book banning happening left and right, debates over critical race theory, you might be unsure about offering direct programming targeted on issues of race for fear of blowback. But if you do go for it, just make sure that your messaging aligns with your library's culture and mission, and that your administration is supportive. Our library is definitely all in. I guess I should, sorry, get rid of that. When it comes to these programs, we have an excellent adult program called Let's Talk About Race. That's award-winning. It just celebrated 5 years. And our kids program is this. It's called Family Storytimes on Race and Diversity. And it's for families with school-age, little older kids. It's pre-recorded, it's virtual. And number one, we celebrate differences. And number two, we want to encourage families to have continuing conversations in their homes with each other about race, equality, and social justice. So you can see on the screen some of the themes that we review over and over, so that when the time comes and they see incidents of racism, discrimination, or injustice out in the world, then they're able to stand up and speak out against it, because that's what we're really looking for. And older children can have these deeper conversations because issues of fairness, bullying, right versus wrong, just really resonate with them. So I can read about Ruby Bridges. I don't know if you can see her down here, and ask, for them to talk about how they would feel if they were her. Or this book, Can I Touch Your Hair, can spark a conversation about the importance of sharing our stories and finding connections and growing our circle of friends. And The Proudest Blue can get a family talking about what they would do, what they would or should do if they see or hear something upsetting at school or at work. So books have the power to raise these questions and spark these conversations and get kids and adults to think outside themselves and see the world in a different way. And you can see just some of the books here that we've read. They cover a wide range of topics and viewpoints, as well as genres, from storybooks to poetry and history and biographies. And I put a link to our YouTube channel on the Padlet if you want to check out our programs. And I just really believe that libraries can play a role in helping kids find their sense of identity in our diverse society. So I'm glad to have been a part of this conversation today. Thanks for listening. I always leave this program with some peace and love. And so this is for you. I hope you take some and pass it on.
Thank you so much, Sira. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but since we're in lightning talk, so we're going to turn it right over to Carina Gonzalez. Carina, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Are my slides appropriately shared?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, here we go. Hello, and welcome to Serving Generation Z in 8 minutes. This presentation is for anyone who wants to better understand the young people in their lives. Don't worry about taking notes. You will have access to this in its entirety, and it is already in PDF form in the Padlet. My name is Carina Gonzalez. I'm a senior adult services librarian with the Piscataway Public Library. This is how you can contact me if you have any questions. While I am currently an adult services librarian, I have also taught pre-K, was a school librarian media specialist for 6 years, first as elementary and then as high school. And then I became an academic librarian for 2 years. I also have 3 children of my own. So engaging with young people and learning how to reach them has been and will always be an interest of mine for a long time. So here is the most agreed upon generational breakdown according to demographers. Demographers definitely disagree, so take all of this with a grain of salt. Each generation blurs a bit around the edges. Take a moment to find yourselves here. I am generation XY cusp, having been born in 1979. I just turned 42. The answer to life, the universe, and everything for my fellow Douglas Adams fans. My generation is also known as the Oregon Trail generation, since many of us died of dysentery on our computers when we were children. You will see that millennials, who people still complain about, are in their 30s. They are already in our workforce and are no longer kids. There are probably plenty of people watching this that are millennials. The group we are focusing on today is that of Generation Z, which is currently around age 9 to 25. I'm going to share with you the top 5 common characteristics of Generation Z, according to my research. First is speed. Generation Z have rarely encountered a basic questions that their phones couldn't answer. I'm not saying they're getting the correct answer, but they're used to getting fast answers. And they're willing to sacrifice accuracy to satisfy minimum requirements and get on with their day. This is called satisficing. They don't want the best answer. They want the fastest one. And they're used to this sort of instant gratification constantly. They prefer texting to email. They actually have a lot of difficulty with email and attaching files. The whole digital native thing is a myth for them. They want graphics instead of text. And they're generally impatient as far as patience is defined by other generations. Gen Z expects fun, not needs, not wants, expects it. For Gen Z, business and pleasure aren't separate. They prefer to keep it casual and entertaining because they have been raised by Netflix and YouTube, as well as their parents. They are unaccustomed to remaining with something that doesn't delight them and instead just change the channel. Don't take it personally when Gen Zs tune out during a presentation or program. It's not about you. They're just used to constant stimulation. And if there is a lull, they will find their stimulation elsewhere, most likely on their phone or their friends beside them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't paying attention either. For them, eye contact, which is how many of us were taught is the way to signify to someone that you are paying attention, is not necessarily a part of etiquette. Their FOMO, the fear of missing out, is very important to them. And as far as media, they get about 8 hours of exposed media today, 4.5 hours more than that if they're Latino or African American. Gen Z wants practicality. No unicorn dream chasers here. They want stability and the reasonable promise of a supported future. The oldest Gen Zers were around 11 the time the Great Recession hit. They saw their parents lose jobs, struggle with money, and many families still haven't fully recovered from the recession. They don't want to hear they can be anything they set their hearts on. They've seen the reality of how money affects lives and want the most sensible way to a stable future. So they're troubled about their future. They want a path, a plan to execute in order to get to where they need to go. So they're highly entrepreneurial. They want that job right after graduating. They're very pragmatic in that way. Gen Z seeks connection, meaningful connection. Much of Gen Z's friendships occur through a screen, especially during the pandemic. They are desperate for connection, but haven't had a lot of practice with face-to-face communication. But they still prefer not only face-to-face, but one-on-one, according to studies. This makes them seem awkward in a group. They want your attention, but don't know how to ask for it. And once they get it, they don't know what to do with it. So you may have to take the lead a bit on those interactions. They are very socially conscious, though, environmentally conscious. They're much more open to diversity. And they really like those personal touches. They want to feel like they're special, which who doesn't, right? Gen Z craves safety. This is actually a picture of my oldest daughter, Emma, who happens to be Gen Z. She was 12 years old in this picture. She's 13 now, and we were having a fun photo shoot. This picture encapsulates the anxiety and craving for safety I've seen in her. Gen Z is exposed to the sorrow of the world more often than we were, and they've only known a life of constant global wars, not to mention climate change. This, more than any other fact about Gen Z, helped me to understand them. It's the cradle of their perspective. They don't have the confidence that other generations can have. They were about 4 or 5 years old during 9/11. And then these attacks obviously led to the war in Afghanistan and then the Iraq war. So the world is unsafe. It is an unsafe place. So they want that attention, which has led to some of them being a little bit overprotective, depending on the parenting style, which is where you get this constant need for affirmation. So here are some takeaways. Tell them why they have to do something, and they're more likely to follow. Show your vulnerability, your humanity, so they can relate. Keep it real. To be interesting, be interested in them, and let them have a say in decision-making. Compliment their successes. This group is all affirmation love language. Remember, they're all individuals, so nothing I just told you could actually apply to them. In short, here are the biggest takeaways. Here are my references that you can access if you would like to bibliographically backtrack what I have said. And goodbye. Again, my name is Carina Gonzalez. Here's how you contact me. And next we're going to have Elizabeth Burns, Stephen Felle, Jen Apgar of the Talking Book and Braille Center. Goodbye and thank you.
Thank you, Carina.
Okay, we're just pulling up our slides now. Thanks, Jen. Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining us at Reading is for Everyone, news and updates from the New Jersey State Library Talking Book and Braille Center. My name is Liz Burns, and I'm the head of Reader Services. I'm here with Stephen Felle, our outreach librarian, and Jen Apgar, our youth services librarian. And we have a lot of information today that we'll be going over quickly. We talk fast in Jersey. Our contact information is on the slide. This, as well as any links we mentioned, will be in the Padlet. TBBC is the division of the New Jersey State Library that provides library services to New Jersey's blind and print disabled population. We do so as a regional library for the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled, or NLS, and NLS is part of the Library of Congress. NLS is a nationwide program that is implemented on a state level. NLS sets the standards, including who qualifies for library services, and they provide the audiobooks and magazines and Braille books and magazines we lend to patrons, and also provide the players to listen to the audiobooks. We at TBBC work directly with the patrons in New Jersey, as well as do outreach and programming. Stephen's going to talk about who we are, who we serve, and what we have, and then Jen will talk about how to sign up for our services. And this how to sign up is different from what it was due to a recent update. So if you've heard us speak in the past, this will be new to you. And now, Stephen.
Thanks, Liz. So I'm going to tell you guys more about TBBC. TBBC is like a public library, except we have accessible versions of books for those who need them. By accessible versions of books, we mean audiobooks and Braille. One way we are like a public library is we are at no cost to our patrons. This includes our books, our equipment, and things mailed back and forth from the library. TBBC is in Trenton, but we serve the entire state of New Jersey. We could do this because our books are either downloaded over the internet or mailed. TBBC has more than 100,000 titles across audio and Braille. These include audio and Braille versions that are exclusive to our library and cannot be found anywhere else. We have access to these exclusive books through our partnership with NLS. Besides books, we also have magazines and newspapers available in audio and Braille. So now I want to talk about who is eligible for our library. Our books are only for those who need them. NLS eligibility criteria says someone is eligible if they cannot read standard print or cannot hold a book due to blindness, visual impairment, physical impairment, perceptual impairment, or a reading disability. Besides blindness, a general visual impairment qualifies someone if it prevents them from reading standard print. We say if you can't read a typical newspaper, you qualify for visual impairment. An example includes macular degeneration. Physical impairment, such as arthritis, qualifies someone if the impairment prevents them from holding a book or turning pages for an extended period of time. Lastly, perceptual impairments and reading disabilities, such as dyslexia, also qualify people. All of our qualifying conditions can be either permanent or temporary. We also serve institutions that have eligible individuals among the regular clientele. These institutions are eligible for their own TBBC library account, and the list of eligible institutions includes public libraries, just like yours. So now I'm going to talk about what we have available through our library. First, we have a mobile app called Bard Mobile. Using Bard Mobile, patrons can download and listen to all of our audiobooks right from their smartphone or tablet. Next, we have our audiobook cartridges. When patrons order books through the mail, they are sent out on one of these cartridges. Cartridges come in mailing containers with a label that will list all of the books included. Patrons send back their finished cartridges in the same container they arrive in. To play the book cartridges, we send a digital talking book player. Players are provided at no cost on a long-term loan status, meaning that patrons can keep their player as long as they're using it. We do require that unused players are returned to us. Our players also work with flash drives, and this is for when patrons download their books from the internet. TBBC also has a collection of large print books. This collection is exclusively for our youth patrons and goes from 3rd grade up to young adult. And finally, we have our Braille books and our Braille e-reader. TBBC recently became part of the NLS e-reader pilot project. Braille e-readers are small devices that display Braille electronically, and they can hold several books at once. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jen.
Thanks, Stephen. So recently, the list of people who can certify an application for us has changed. The complete list can be found on the application, and it's always included doctors of medicine, doctors of osteopathy, ophthalmologists, and so on. The newest change is that the list now expands to include educators, certified reading specialists, school psychologists, and librarians. These are all people who can sign for any disability, but the biggest impact is for those who qualify with a reading disability. It now means that those who qualify with reading disabilities no longer require just an MD or DO signature, which was the case prior to this change. Requiring only that MD or DO signature for those with a reading disability proved to be a huge barrier because in most cases, the MD or DO did not make the diagnosis. And there have been times that because of this, they wouldn't sign the application because they didn't feel comfortable doing so. It also removes a cost barrier that may have been a factor because of copays or cost of office visits to the doctor. It basically levels the playing field for everyone. We do have an application that has to be completed for folks to get signed up for our services. The most current version of our application can be found on our website, so please remember to throw out any old applications from us that you may have. The first page of the application has all the information needed for the qualifying patron. It asks for name, address, phone number, etc., as well as a checkbox asking how the person qualifies for services with us. The second page is the most important part of that application and requires a signature from a certifying authority that I was just talking about. Without the signature, we cannot do anything with the application. We don't need any medical records or background information. That signature is all the proof that we need. Because of this, we want to emphasize the importance of making sure that the name, the contact information, place of work, job title, and all the credentials earned are included on the certifying authority page. The remaining parts of the application ask what types of services the person would like from us and how they would like to receive those services. On this slide is an example of our new certifying authority page, which we will soon be using going forward. We're just waiting on final approval for this. The certifying authority would fill out all of the necessary information on this portion of the application. So for this example, we used librarian Riley Smith. Riley would fill this out with name, Riley Smith, MLIS, or whatever degree was earned, title librarian, organization, ABC Library, also include the address, email, and the phone number. Next is a checkbox to certify that the applicant is eligible for services. This must be checked for this application to be complete. This is something that's new to our application, so please be sure to check this off when completing applications for new patrons. We cannot accept the application without that check mark. Last, sign the application with an electronic signature, which is also relatively new for us and is simply the certifying authority typing their name on the signature line. Once this page and the remaining parts of the application are complete, the person can email the application to us so we can process it. If someone does choose to mail the application to us, please still physically sign the application with a clear and legible signature, as well as checking off that box before sending it to us. Also, the certifying authority, if the certifying authority is submitting applications for more than one person, each person does need their own application filled out completely. Thanks, and as a reminder, all of our information and links can be found in the Padlet.
Oh, Jen Apgar, champion of talking fast. We love you. Thank you to the team at Talking Book and Braille Center. And now we're going to turn it over to Neil Grimes, who is going to talk to us about Real Men Read. Neil, are you there?
Sorry about that. Let me put my video on too. Okay, can everyone hear me and see the screen? Perfect. So Real Men Read is a program that can be adapted and used by all libraries. The mission of all libraries is literacy, and Real Men Read really addresses the need for literacy support for pre-K through 6th grade students. A program like Real Men Read has the potential to connect connect with community members, community mentors, with community libraries, schools, and students. It also presents the opportunity for libraries to apply for literacy and community grants. So let's briefly take a closer look at the K12 environment today in the United States. There are 90,400 public and private K12 schools in the US today that service 56.4 million K12 students. And what I found from my research is out of all these students that are attending our schools in America, the student population that needs the greatest support are our Black and Latino males. From my research, what I found, which is very startling, so I included on the slide, is in most American cities, dropout rates for Black and Latino males are well above 50%, and they are less likely to enroll or graduate from college than any other group. Taking a closer look at, who's teaching our students and, if there's any kind of male mentorship for our Black and Latino students, kind of brought me to this slide. So 75% of all K-12 educators are female. 9 out of 10 elementary teachers are female. So there's a real lack of a male mentor or role model in many of our K-12 elementary schools across America. Looking at the teacher race, this was kind of interesting too. There's very few Hispanic or African American teachers, and even less male teachers. So this slide, I just kind of wanted to briefly touch upon the K-12 environment. So taking a closer look at the K-12 environment in the state of New Jersey. There is a lot of schools in New Jersey. There is 2,516 K-12 schools to be exact. And having that many schools and over 500 school districts really lends itself well to public library school partnerships. As is the case with my Real Men Read program, I used an academic library school partnership model. But really this program can be done using that type of model. And you could also see how diverse New Jersey's student population is. In Passaic County, where William Patterson University is situated, 55% of the K-12 students are currently Hispanic. To kind of give you a comparison point, 45% of all K-12 students in New York City public schools are Hispanic. So we have a very large Hispanic student population here in northern New Jersey. But this is a statewide look. So Real Men Read, why reading aloud? What the research says. So according to Stephen Krashen, hearing stories read aloud has much the same language attainment effect as reading itself. According to Sullivan, a British study found that only 53% of parents of children up to 4 years old read daily to their children. Okay, that number drops from ages 9 to 12. The number drops to 21%. Studies I've looked at demonstrate the involvement of a father or positive male role model and the impact that will have on children. So here's a very broad overview of the program. So basically the formula is male mentorship and reading aloud could lead to an increase in students' interest in reading and encourage students' overall reading activities, including the use of our libraries, whose mission is literacy. So some potential outcomes include an increased use of the library, increase in the number of parents who are reading to their children, and a lifetime love of learning. So here's a very brief look at Real Men Read. It started again in the Chicago Public Schools, 2006, at William Patterson University, the David and Lorraine Chang Library. We launched our own Real Men Read program during Read Across America Week, which takes place in March. And that's the week where you have Dr. Seuss Day. And we launched it right before the pandemic with in-person class readings. I was lucky enough to have access to a professional development schools network of 50+ schools in northern New Jersey. So these were schools that our university had agreements with already in place where our readers could go out and read to. So I'm working on building this program and making it better. So year one was in person, 15 participants, 10 schools, 300 students. Here's some pictures. I'm in the center. In the bottom left corner is the academic provost, Josh Powers, here at William Patterson University. Fast forward to year two. Everyone was forced because of the pandemic to do pretty much all their teaching and learning remotely and online. So I was able to pretty much double the number of participants that I had. 30 participants, read to 34 classes, 680 students. And you can see on this slide, we use Zoom, we use Google Meet, and we use Teams to read books virtually. Whether the book was a physical book, as is the case with our academic library dean, reading a physical book. And here's one of our students reading an ebook from our kids ebook for kids collection, which is like Mac and Via. So the last two slides I want to talk about are steps to building a successful Real Men Read program at your library. Some really important takeaways. And I also have uploaded some pertinent files that will help you in building your own Real Men Read program on the Padlet. So keep that in mind. That's where this PowerPoint's available as well. So going through this really quickly, establish and engage in library school partnerships with schools in your community. So the most important thing for any kind of in-person or virtual read aloud community-wide program is establishing these partnerships with community schools. This can be done by working with school level administrators, your principals, or district level superintendents. Oftentimes schools will have to get school board approval. So kind of keep that in mind. So you want to have them on board. You might also need to have approval from your own library administrator and own library board members for a program like this. Another recommendation is to identify mentors for the program by considering partnering with nonprofits in your community, community businesses, and other community organizations. So try to reach out to these organizations and partner with them for this reading program. Market the program through library social media and local media outlets. My program was actually featured on NewJersey.com when I initially rolled it out in 2020. So it's a good way to kind of get recognition for this type of work. You're going to have to come up with a list of recommended books that would be great appropriate for your male mentors to conduct the read alouds. It's important also to kind of set expectations and do an orientation for mentors. So I'll kind of make that recommendation as well. Also to collect pictures and data from your program so that you could kind of track it and, you know, show the importance and the impact of the program in your community, and continually work to build and recruit and grow your program. Those are my references, and I'll turn it back over to, I think, Darby, who's the moderator. Thank you so much, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or follow up with me via email if I could be of assistance in building your own Real Men Read program at your library. Stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Neil, and thank you to all of our lightning talk presenters. I know it's not easy to talk in 8 minutes, so I do appreciate that. Our friends in the breakout room will hopefully be back very shortly before we move on to the moderated roundtables. So I'm going to assume that we will just take like a super short break for the moment. So if you need to get up and stretch or whatever you need to do while we wait for the Track B folks to rejoin us.